Hello, and welcome back. Tonight, we step into the darkest shadows of the 20th century, a time when the world was set on fire and the fate of humanity hung by a thin, fragile thread. The Second World War was more than a conflict of nations. It was a storm that reshaped every soul on Earth. From the frozen ruins of Stalingrad to the burning sands of North Africa, these are the echoes of a struggle we must never forget. Before we begin this journey through the fire of history, if you value these moments of deep reflection, please like this video and subscribe. We remember the past to protect the future. Close your eyes. Listen to the wind of time. Let us travel back to the Great War. Fact 1. The Phantom Army, Operation Quicksilver. Before the historic D-Day landings, the Allies created one of the greatest deceptions in military history. They invented an entire phantom army led by General George Patton to trick the enemy into thinking the invasion would happen at Pas-de-Calais. This ghost army consisted of thousands of inflatable rubber tanks, wooden airplanes, and fake radio transmissions. From the air, it looked like a massive, terrifying force ready to strike. This psychological masterpiece saved countless lives by diverting enemy defenses away from the real landing beaches in Normandy. It serves as a reminder that in war, the mind is often a more powerful weapon than the sword, and that silence and shadows can win battles before they even begin. Fact 2. The Unsinkable Sam, the War Cat. In the midst of the terrifying naval battles in the Atlantic lived a cat known as Unsinkable Sam. This black and white feline began his journey on the German battleship Bismarck. When the ship was sunk, Sam was found floating on a plank and rescued by the British. He then lived on the HMS Cossack, which was also torpedoed and sunk. Amazingly, Sam survived again and was moved to the aircraft carrier HMS Ark Royal, which, unbelievably, met the same fate. Sam survived all 3 shipwrecks and eventually retired to a quiet life on land. His story is a rare glimmer of light in the dark history of the seas, proving that even in the most violent storms of human making, life finds a way to endure.
Fact 3. The Code That Never Broke, the Navajo Talkers. In the Pacific Theater, the United States used a weapon that the enemy could never decode, the Navajo language. A group of Navajo soldiers, known as the Code Talkers, developed a complex military code based on their unwritten native tongue. They translated military terms into Navajo words. For example, a tank was called a tortoise, and a fighter plane was a hummingbird. Their speed and accuracy were legendary, and during the Battle of Iwo Jima, they transmitted over 800 messages without a single mistake. This ancient, beautiful language became a vital shield for freedom. It is a profound irony that a culture once suppressed by its own government became the very thing that saved the nation in its darkest hour. Fact 4. The Witches of the Night, the FY 588 Regiment. Among the many heroes of the Soviet Union were the Night Witches, an all-female regiment of bomber pilots. They flew outdated wooden biplanes that were so slow they were difficult for modern fighters to hit. These brave women flew only at night, cutting their engines as they approached their targets so they could glide in total silence. The only sound the enemy heard was the whooshing of the wind against their wings, which sounded like broomsticks, hence their nickname. They flew over 30,000 missions, braving the freezing cold and constant danger. Their story is a testament to the fact that courage has no gender, and that the quietest hunters are often the most formidable. Fact 5. The Ghost Ships of the Pacific. The Battle of Leyte Gulf was the largest naval battle in history, a clash of steel and fire that covered vast areas of the Pacific Ocean. During this battle, the scale of destruction was so immense that dozens of massive warships were sent to the dark bottom of the sea. Today, these ships remain in the Iron Bottom Sound, serving as silent underwater cathedrals for the sailors who went down with them. These rusted giants are now covered in coral and deep-sea life, transforming from machines of war into monuments of peace. They remind us that the ocean is the ultimate keeper of our secrets, holding the heavy weight of our history beneath its calm blue surface. Fact 6. The Longest Day. D-Day. June 6, 1944, remains the most significant date in the liberation of Europe. Known as D-Day, it involved the largest seaborne invasion in human history. Over 150,000 Allied troops landed on the heavily fortified beaches of Normandy under a rain of fire. The water turned red, and the air was filled with the roar of thousands of ships and planes. It was a day of absolute terror and absolute bravery. For many of the young men who stepped off those boats, it was their first and last day of war. D-Day was the beginning of the end of the darkness that had gripped the world, a moment when the light of freedom finally broke through the clouds of tyranny. Fact 7. The Enigma Crack. The Secret Victory. Behind the front lines, a secret war was being fought with mathematics and machines. At Bletchley Park, a brilliant team led by Alan Turing worked night and day to crack the German Enigma code. The Enigma machine was thought to be unbreakable, but through genius and persistence, the team developed the bomb computer to decipher its messages. Historians believe that cracking this code shortened the war by at least 2 years and saved millions of lives. This silent victory reminds us that the course of history is not only changed by soldiers on the battlefield, but by the quiet, tireless work of thinkers and dreamers who fight with the power of the human mind. Fact 8. The Tragedy of the Independence. In the final days of the war, the USS Indianapolis delivered the components of the first atomic bomb to Tinian Island. Shortly after its mission, the ship was torpedoed and sunk in the middle of the Pacific. Of the 1,100 men on board, hundreds survived the sinking only to face 4 days of terror in the shark-infested waters. Without food, water, or lifeboats, they drifted in the open ocean, waiting for a rescue that didn't know they were missing. Only 316 men were eventually pulled from the water. Their sacrifice is a haunting story of survival and the heavy price of a mission that would eventually change the world forever. Fact 9. The Fall of Berlin. The End of the Nightmare. As the spring of 1945 arrived, the war in Europe reached its final, violent conclusion in the streets of Berlin. The city became a landscape of fire and rubble as millions of soldiers converged on the center of the nightmare. The fighting was house to house, room to room, until the red flag was finally raised over the Reichstag. The fall of Berlin was the collapse of a dark empire that had promised to last 1,000 years. It was a moment of immense relief, but also of deep sorrow for a continent that lay in ruins. It serves as a stark warning of the destruction that follows when power is untethered from morality and human life is devalued. Fact 11. The Frozen Hell. The Battle of Stalingrad. The Battle of Stalingrad remains one of the bloodiest and most turning point moments in human history. For 5 months, the city became a furnace of winter and fire. Soldiers fought for every single brick, often battling across a single hallway or kitchen. The temperatures dropped so low that oil froze inside the tanks and bread had to be cut with saws. Over 2 million people were lost in this single city. It was here that the momentum of the Dark Empire was finally broken against the sheer will of people defending their home. Stalingrad is a symbol of total war, a place where the earth itself seemed to scream under the weight of so much suffering and sacrifice. Fact 12. The Miracle of Dunkirk, Operation Dynamo. In 1940, over 300,000 Allied soldiers were trapped on the beaches of Dunkirk, surrounded by the enemy and facing certain destruction. With the large Navy ships unable to reach the shallow waters, a little ship's flotilla was born. Hundreds of ordinary fishing boats, lifeboats, and pleasure yachts sailed across the dangerous English Channel, driven by civilians to rescue the soldiers. Under constant fire from the sky, these tiny boats ferried the men to safety. It was a moment where the line between civilian and soldier vanished. Dunkirk reminds us that when humanity is at its most vulnerable, the collective courage of ordinary people can perform miracles that change the destiny of the world. Fact 13. The Secret of Peenemund, the V-2 rockets. At a secret facility on the Baltic coast, the first man-made object to reach the edge of space was launched. This was the V-2 rocket, a weapon of terrifying speed that could strike a city without warning. While it was a machine of war, it also laid the foundation for the future of space exploration. The technology that brought destruction during the 1940s would later carry humanity to the moon. It is a haunting paradox of history that our reach for the stars was born out of the fires of our most violent conflict. It teaches us that technology is a neutral force. It is the human heart that decides whether it will be used to destroy or to discover. Fact 15. The Luggage of the Lost, the Holocaust. No history of the Great War is complete without acknowledging the deepest scar on the human soul, the Holocaust. In the liberation of the camps, soldiers found mountains of shoes, eyeglasses, and suitcases. Each item represented a life, a dream, and a story that was silenced by hate. This was an industrialized tragedy, where the power of a modern state was turned against innocent men, women, and children. We remember this not to dwell on the darkness, but as a sacred duty to ensure that never again remains a reality. It is a reminder that the greatest enemy in war is not a foreign army, but the loss of our own humanity and empathy. Fact 14. The Resistance, the Shadow Fighters. Across occupied Europe, ordinary people refused to surrender in spirit. In the shadows of occupied cities, the resistance was born. These were librarians, teachers, and shopkeepers who risked everything to print secret newspapers, hide refugees, and sabotage enemy supply lines. They used invisible ink, hidden radios, and silent signals to fight back. Many were caught and never returned, but their defiance proved that you can occupy a land, but you cannot occupy a mind that chooses to be free. The resistance shows us that even in the darkest night of tyranny, the small, flickering lights of individual courage can eventually lead the way to the dawn. Fact 16. The Desert Rats, War in the Sands. While Europe was covered in snow and ruins, another war was being fought in the vast, burning deserts of North Africa. This was a war of movement and dust, where tanks moved like ships across a sea of sand. The soldiers, known as the Desert Rats, faced extreme heat by day and freezing cold by night, often with very little water. The battles like Al Alamein were crucial for control of the world's lifelines. The Desert War was a test of endurance and logistics, showing that the environment can be just as formidable an opponent as any army. It remains a cinematic chapter of history, where the horizon offered no cover and no mercy. Fact 18. The Fallen Giant, the Sinking of the Yamato. The Yamato was the largest and most powerful battleship ever built, a floating fortress that represented the pride of the Japanese Empire. In 1945, on a final suicide mission towards Okinawa, it was attacked by hundreds of Allied planes. The giant ship, which many thought was unsinkable, was torn apart by explosions and vanished beneath the waves, taking thousands of sailors with it. The sinking of the Yamato marked the end of the era of the battleship and the beginning of the era of air power. It serves as a poignant metaphor for the fall of empires. No matter how large or strong something appears, it cannot withstand the changing tides of time and technology. Fact 18. The Monuments Men, Saving Beauty. Amidst the destruction of cities, a special group of soldiers was tasked with a unique mission: to save the art and culture of Europe. These were the Monuments Men, museum curators and historians who went to the front lines to find and protect masterpieces by Da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Rembrandt that had been stolen or hidden in salt mines. They understood that a nation is not just its people, but its memory and its art. By saving these treasures, they ensured that when the war was over, humanity would still have its soul. Their story reminds us that even in the middle of a world-ending conflict, beauty is worth fighting for. Fact 19. The Japanese Surrender, the Missouri. On September 2, 1945, the most destructive war in history finally came to an end on the deck of the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. The signing of the surrender documents took only a few minutes, but it represented the relief of billions of people. As the sun shone over the hundreds of ships in the harbor, the world realized that the killing had finally stopped. It was a moment of profound silence and reflection. The war had changed the map of the world, dissolved empires, and cost over 60 million lives. The ceremony on the Missouri was not just a victory, it was a global prayer for a peace that would last.
Fact 20. The Eternal Flame. World War II ended 80 years ago, but its echoes still shape our world today. We live in the house that the survivors built. Every international law, every border, and every dream of peace was forged in the fire of that conflict. The veterans of that war are passing into history, leaving us with their stories as a final gift. As you sleep tonight, remember that the peace we enjoy was bought with a price we can barely imagine. The stars above the battlefields are the same stars that watch over us now. We are the keepers of their memory. We are the guardians of the peace.
Conclusion. The final salute. The guns are silent now. The fields of Europe and the islands of the Pacific are green again. As you drift into sleep, let the lessons of the past bring you wisdom. Let the courage of those who came before you bring you strength. Sleep in peace, for the world is quiet.